Hey, good evening, everyone. Uh, Congratulations to each of you for taking time to join this session because most of us, will not take it serious on certain things which are very, very important in this country because we are from a different country. We are first generation in this country. We don't know many things are different here, whether it is related to college admissions, whether it is related to our retirement planning, or there are many aspects which are completely different, but we assume until last minute we think like it will work in the same way, and then in the last minute we understand and we are taking a risk without doing a proper planning. So if someone is new to my webinars, I am Kishore. I am a licensed financial professional, and that is my email address, kishore.ramanaju@gmail.com. And yeah, without wasting any time, I did this session just 2 or 3 days back, but I know that it was a short notice. Many of you are not able to join that session. So I will quickly give a high level overview. And along with me, I have Aditya and Nitya, and also we have Jayesh. They also, right, they got into some top universities. They also will be sharing tips and the admission process. They just recently got into colleges. Aditya and Jayesh got last year, and Nitya just got in to the college this year. So everything is fresh in their mind. They will explain how to apply for scholarships, how to write, how the entire process will look like, how students should be prepared well enough in advance so they get into some top colleges. All those tips they will share it. But as we all know, there are two aspects in the college planning, right? In the college admission, one is the financial aspect. The second is the academic or with respect to extracurricular activities or writing essays or all those things. So I will be taking the first part, which is right very important for all the parents, and then Jayesh, Aditya, and Nitya will talk about the second part, right, which is more important for the kids. So why do we need to do college education, right? Let us start with this, right? What is the importance? Again, most of us are from India or from South Asia, so we all know the importance of education, the importance of having a degree, a college degree, right? Um, because it pays a better salary, right? With a if you are, if someone is just a high school graduate, they may make approximately 42K. Someone with a bachelor's degree may make approximately 80K. Somebody with a professional degree will make 156K. And we all want to give better life for our kids, so we want them to study well. So that's why, right, we want them to give a better life. So because they can make good salary and they can live comfortably, that's why it is very important for them to complete the college education. And also, right, we know about the current inflation, recession, the right unemployment will be more high if the education levels are low. If somebody is a professional, right, if somebody completed, let us say, medicine with some specialization, or somebody is an AI expert. So if they have some professional degree, then the chances of they getting unemployed is very, very low. Whereas someone with without a proper education, they will be the first ones who may get unemployed, right? We saw many examples during COVID season also, where many of them without proper education lost the jobs. But if someone is having a good professional qualification or that extra talent, extra skills, they have a high probability of the survival of the fittest. Then what are the areas, right? What are the hot areas? All right. Okay. Now we all understand it is important to have a college degree. Again, within college degree, again, there are various branches like they can get into social sciences, health sciences, business, or math and stats. And these are approximately the average starting salary as on today. For the class of 2021, if they're doing through computer science, we know that how AI and other technologies are booming like anything. And so Definitely, if your kids are interested into computer science, that is one area where their salary, their starting salary can be approximately 80K plus once they complete their college graduation. And what is the other reason why we need to have proper planning, advanced planning? Because college education is one area where the inflation is the highest when you compare with medical care or housing or the groceries and other things. If you see from last 40 years, the average increase is approximately 5.8%. Year on year, it is growing. And from 1983 to now, there is a 861 percentage of increase in the college expenses, right? Even not only US, even if we look at our right, how much we paid for our schooling or for our inter or our BTech or MCAs, we might have paid maybe a 3-digit number for our schooling. We might have paid a 4-digit or less than that for our inter. We might have paid maximum a 5-digit for our BTech or post graduations. But now, even for a primary school, right? Even in India, we are paying lakhs of rupees. To do a medical or a BTech from a private college, you have to pay lakhs and lakhs, 50 lakhs, 60 lakhs. So that inflation is common across the globe in the education sector. So the schooling is cheap here, but when kids come to the college, that is where we have a huge expenditure, which we need to be ready, right? Which we need to be planned well in advance. Why there is such a cost? Because first thing is the funds, right? The financial aids are going down each and every year, right? Even still they are there, but the amount of aids which kids were getting before few years, and now it is nearly, right? In last 10 years, it went down by 6%, whereas the fee is increasing year on year. Why the fee is increasing? Because colleges, right, are increasing their infrastructure, they are increasing their lab facility, their libraries. They want to attract the best talent, so they will do a lot of right. If you have a high school kid, then you might be already receiving a lot of mails, right, saying like, okay, right, these are the best things about our college, like that. So they are spending a lot of money, and the funds which they used to get from the government is going down. So that's why the fee, the college fee is increasing year on year. What is the approximate fee as on today? 1 year cost in a public college, right? In state college, if you are staying in a state and if your kid is planning to go to the within the same state, the approximate fee is 23,250 for a public college, whereas private or out of state is approximately 53K per annum. And we are looking minimum 4 to 6 years of college education, or if it is medicine, it is much more than that. So if your kid is approximately 18 years old, you are looking at approximate cost of 100,000. If it is a public college, you are looking at approximately 230K if it is a private college. If your kid is 18 years old now, but if you have a kid who is like approximately 10 years old now, right? Because you have inflation. Every year there is a compounding growth, compounding increase on the annual fee. So if you have a kid who is around 10 years old, you are approximately looking at 148K for 4 years of education and 340K for a private college. So if you have a newborn, you are looking at 240K for a in-state and 554K for a private college or out of state. So that is what, right? If our average annual salary is 80K to 100K, we need to have minimum 5 to 6 years of annual salary just to send our kids to for the college, right? 4 years of college. So are we planned enough? Are we prepared enough, right? Because most of us save 10K, 20K, 30K per annum, and if you go to one India trip, all that savings is gone. So do you have the sufficient savings to send our kids to the best colleges, right? We cannot ask them to go to a community college. Community college might be cheap, but we don't want to spoil our kids' futures, right? We are not like lot of other communities. We want our kids to go to best colleges. We want them to do best in their life. So then what we'll do, we will either sell all our properties and we have to send them if we are not planned enough, if we are not saving early. Those are the consequences. And many of us don't realize because nobody is educating or sharing all this information with you until your kids are in high school. Many parents don't realize that this much cost is involved in the college education and this much inflation is involved. So what are the various ways we can pay for the college? One of the major way, again, for which there is a lot of information is missing, that is grants and scholarships. In this country, right, even though the fee is more, there are a lot of, right, it can be from the government or it can be from companies like Apple or McDonald's, or there are a lot of big companies, they give scholarships. They, right, government give grants, right? That is one major sector where we can reduce the burden to some extent, right? Again, uh, what are the various scholarships? I'll explain, but that is one area. Then the second area, the second major area is parents' income and savings, right? The third area is student borrowing or student income. But again, in our community, we don't want student borrow, because once they borrow some 200, 300K, for next 10 to 15 years, whatever they make, they have to pay for all those loans and everything. So we want to, instead of putting that burden on our kids, we will try to generally use, right, to use our savings. And if we use all our savings and send them to a college, and suddenly if there is a medical issue or suddenly if there is some emergency, will we have sufficient buffer to take care of those things, right? We also need to think of those things. But let us discuss about these two areas mainly. One is grants and scholarships. Second is how to save, or what are the different ways we can save for the kids' college education. Right? Whether it is scholarships or grants or saving, the parents saving for their kids, the planning is most important. Otherwise, when they are in 11th grade or 12th grade, if you start planning, already you missed a lot of time, because you cannot suddenly create some 150 200K for your kids college when they are in the 11th or 12th grade, other than selling some properties in India or selling your house in US, right? So that's why that planning is very, very critical. Once you know what is the expected cost, once you know that this much expenditure is involved, then you can plan, okay, I have 10 more years for my kid to go to college. Okay, how much I need to save per annum? Like that, once you start doing that planning and execute that plan, you will be in a better shape, you will be in a better position to take care of those expenses. Otherwise, we'll be completely, either we have to spoil our kids' future by sending them to some bad college, or we have to basically, right, sell off all our properties, and we are getting into more risk, because we never know what can, right, what type of medical issues or anything can happen, or what type of savings we'll have for our retirement, all those things. So again, as I mentioned, the two major buckets from where this college education expenses can go, one is from the scholarships and grants. What do you mean by these scholarships and grants? Basically, they are the gifts from the companies or from the government, where the students don't need to pay it back, right? So generally grants are based on the need based. That means if somebody is making less than 50K per annum, 60K per annum, government pays some grants to such families, so that those families can send their kids to get a graduation, to get a graduate degree. Whereas scholarships are generally based on merit. That means if they are good in athletics, if they are good in art, if they are good in sports, or if they are good in something, in some community activities. So based on certain qualifications, they will provide scholarships. So there are again hundreds of companies available which will provide these scholarships, and finding the right ones, right? We cannot just apply for all 100 and get disappointed that we are not getting it. So there is also a mechanism where we can find out which ones are best for our kids, which one we can apply, what are the best ones, what are the timelines, when we have to apply, how we have to apply. All those things will be sharing later. But again, these grants and scholarships can come from the US government, can come from the states, can come from the colleges, can come from non-profit or private organizations. And then the other option is taking a loan, right? What are the best banks to take the loans? That is also I'll share. And then what is the major difference between grant and scholarship? As I mentioned, grant is mainly based on your financial situation. If generally, right, again, this is not something which we may not be eligible most of the time, because on average, our annual salaries are above 70K, 80K, and household income may be more than 100K. We may not be eligible for most of the grants because they are generally for when the financial situation is like less than 50K, such type of thing. It is more based on the need. Whereas scholarships are based on your skills. So this is an area where our community, our kids can focus more rather than the grants. What are the examples of some grants? Again, you also have some tax benefits when with respect to scholarships compared to grants. And right, these are some of the examples of grants, right? Right. For example, federal Pell Grant, where they can receive up to 6,895. Then you have federal supplemental educational opportunity grant, where they can uh, right, where they can receive up to $4,000. There is a teach grant where kids can receive up to 3,000. But again, as I mentioned, most of our community may not be eligible for grants because of our overall financial situation. We are not completely down, we are not completely up. So we are somewhere in between. So grants may not be suitable for our kids much. So I don't want to take much time on the grants. But there are a lot of scholarships and there are a lot of loan programs, right? Either scholarships is one option where they may get 20K, 30K, 40K based on their skill set and based on their right, their GPAs or their scores in SAT, ACT, or based on their community service, or based on if they are playing some sports at a state level or something. They may be eligible for uh, anywhere, right? Starting from 20K to 50K, 100K, which might, right, reduce parents' burden by nearly 40 to 50%, which again, Nitya and Aditya, they will cover more aspects on what they did or how much they received or how they have to apply all those things. But other than scholarships, we have these loans, is where you have to pay approximately 5% or 6%, 7% interest rates. Uh, right. Again, I'll be sharing all this information with you. Then what are the other strategies, right? Let me also share you. Right, I'll be sending this link to all. But right, these are like some of the top 40 scholarships which our kids can apply. And this is like I created a scholarship tracker where, right, is it a national scholarship? Is it a local scholarship? Is it a regional scholarship? What is the due date, right? This is like a tracker. There are so many scholarships and you have a website link for each of them, right? Is it based on financial need? Is it based on academic standard? Is it based on leadership or community involvement? Is it based on some athletic or art? Like that, these are various areas where our kids can apply, and if everything, if they meet all the criteria, they may get some 15K, 20K per annum as a scholarship. And this tracker is basically to track, like, okay, what they applied, what is the due date, and what are the requirements. Is a resume or essay writing? Essay is important, all those things. And these are like various scholarships for summer program, right? Summer. So these are like these are the due dates by this, and who is eligible? Is it undergrad or a graduate or a high school. And these are like various scholarships which are available for the fall season. These are various scholarships for the international student. These are various organizations which are right professional organizations which are offering the scholarships for each right undergrads or grads or PhDs. And these are various student loan programs, right? To receive for the loan, what are the various links? And again, right, it is not that only in the high school seniors, even high school juniors or someone who just joined high school, they are also eligible for various scholarships. So again, I consolidated all the information with the links, what is the amount, what is the due date for each of them, for high school seniors, high school juniors, and high school sophomores and the freshmen. What are the various scholarships which are available? I consolidated all the information. I'll be sharing the information with you all. And also, if you don't want to look at, oh, there are 100 different links, right? So we also have a tool which can help, right? Once we have a one-on-one session based on your kid's age, kids whether they are on a H4 or whether they are a citizen or BC, based on various conditions, we can see like, okay, which are the best 20 or 30 scholarships they can apply for, right? Which we'll be doing in the 101 session. But this is like a consolidated list of the entire, entire scholarship information, which will be helpful for your kids to reduce the burden on the parents, right? Even if they make some 50K, that will reduce out of 200K. If 50K is gone, then you have to only worry about another 150K, right? This can reduce your burden by some extent. So, right, grants, it is out of question. Scholarships, yes, it is possible. And I consulted all the information. And then you have loans. Again, that is another option. But do you want to pay 6%, 7% per annum as interest rate, or do you want to do something else, right? Again, going back to our right. So we know that college education is expensive. It needs a lot of cost. And the two major ways is either getting uh, grants or scholarships or loans, or the other way is parents doing some savings as early as possible, right? So one of the option is you do long-term investments on some quality stocks or quality ETFs, right? Don't, right? I'm not suggesting that you have to do day trading or something, but doing on a, right? So we have bots, we have all the algos which are configured. They look on a weekly basis on some high quality stocks and those things, and they will suggest, right? For example, you can see example, NVIDIA, we got a buy at around $180. Now it is nearly $420 in last 3 to 4 months. Meta, we got a buy at around $80. It is nearly $320 because last year it was completely down market. Many quality stocks went down so much. SOXL went to $8, from $8 to $28 in last 4 to 5 months. TQQ, which went from nearly $16 to $40. So this is one strategy, right? Again, I'm not saying that you have to put all your savings into one strategy. Always diversify, because we never know, right? Again, if market goes down for a few more weeks, then again we may be in a similar situation. Then, so this is one of the strategy. Then you can also do, we have strategies like Roth IRA. You can use your life insurance as a right, the kids college. You can use home equity loan. You can take loan on your home and you can pay it for the college, or you can take private loans. We can do 529 plans. We can do UGMA, UTMA. We can do Coverdell education. Again, based on each and every family, based on each and every scenario, how many years is left for your kid to get into college, the situation might be different. For someone, 529 might be good if your kid is just 1 or 2 years old now. For someone else, stocks might be a better strategy. And it may not be just one strategy, it might be a combination of 2 or 3 strategies. For someone, right, taking a home equity loan and doing some Roth IRA might be another option. So based on your individual scenarios, we can, right, once we do a consultation, right, a financial session, a free one-on-one session based on your kid's age and other things, we can see which is the best strategy for your scenario based on various factors, right? So that's what I want to quickly cover today on why college education is important and what is the current cost for the college education, how much cost you have to be well planned enough for your kid based on their age, and what are the various strategies available in the market today, right? So that's what I wanted to cover to share with all the parents, because most of us, again, as I mentioned, until our kids are in the final year or in the high school seniors or high school juniors, we don't realize what risk is coming, right? We are taking that risk without realizing it. So it is very, very important for you to start planning, start saving as early as possible, so that we can send our kids to the best colleges and give them a better life. So with that, I want to introduce Nithya. Nithya is also from Houston, Texas. They are our good family friends. She is the topper from her school, and she got into pre-med. So yeah, and Nithya will be sharing a few tips, and she will share her experience. She just completed her high school senior, and yeah, thanks Nithya. I know you had a party, but still took time to come and share all your experience and all the tips. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, Uncle me. Hi everyone, my name is Nithya Kurali. I am 18 years old, so I am going to be an incoming freshman. I am just joining college in 2 weeks. I'll be attending Vanderbilt University, which is one of the best universities in the US, on a full ride merit scholarship, meaning I am paying $0 for college based on merit. And I am pursuing medical pre-med field to hopefully become a doctor one day. So I just wanted to hop on here and give some advice and tips for any students that are going to be applying for college this year, or any high school students that are going to be applying in the future. College is very important, and the cost of college is increasing more and more by the year. So for college, my college specifically, the tuition is $60,000, and the total cost is $90,000 per year to go to college. So like Kishore Uncle said, it's very important to be starting to think about how you're paying for college and the steps that you're taking for that. I specifically wanted to talk a lot about merit scholarships and how you can fund college from scholarships, either from the university or outside scholarships as well. So instead of paying directly from your own funding and your own bank account, you can find scholarships from the colleges that you're applying to, as well as community organizations that can help fund college for you as well. So that's a little bit about what I wanted to share. I apologize for the lighting. I'm at a party right now, so I hope everyone can see and hear me just fine. And the first thing I want to share is, if any student is not yet a junior in college and high school, 11th grade or younger, the biggest tip I encourage is to look into the National Merit Scholarship and the National Merit Program. I don't know if any of you all have heard about that before, but it's something that's not talked about a lot that I think is very important. So the National Merit Scholarship Program, how it works is, during your junior year, every single student takes the PSAT qualifying test. And if you get a 1%, 1 percentile score, which is one of the highest scores you can get on the PSAT, you can get full rides to many colleges in the US. Many colleges in your state give you full rides. Some even pay for you to go to college and give you more money to have you attend that college as well. And so if you are going to be a junior in high school, or you have not yet reached the stage, I strongly recommend looking into the National Merit Scholarship Program and looking into starting to study for the PSAT and everything as well, because it is great to put on your college applications. And if you take the test and you do qualify for national merit, it is a safety net, because you already have guaranteed full rides to many colleges in your state, in the US, and it can help you get other scholarships as well. And so to give you background, I got almost a full ride to every college I applied to in Texas and out of state as well. So that is definitely something to look into. And then I also recommend going to your district's website or reaching out to your counselor and seeing what type of scholarships they are offering. Oftentimes, the district will have a list of scholarships, and it's important to look at those and see what you're eligible for and apply to as many as you can. And you can always receive funding from that source as well. So, just these little tips, if you pay attention and you start applying to a lot of these scholarships and start really looking into this, you can fund your college through these sources as well. And it can be very helpful in the future if you are trying to go to medical school, a dental school, law school. I know that stuff is expensive. So paying for your undergrad through these type of sources will help you in the future when you're going to these grad schools as well, because those can get very expensive. So definitely start looking into those programs as well. And then the other thing I wanted to share is if you are looking into applying for an Ivy League school or one of the top schools, they actually do not offer any merit scholarships or anything like that. So unless you are classified as low income, you will be having to pay the full 80K or the full 90K to go to the college. So just keep that in mind once you're applying to colleges as well. So that's just something I wanted to share about the scholarships and the merit scholarships regarding colleges. And then Kishore Uncle, did you want me to talk a little bit about like the college application process as well, or is that good?
I think we have Aditya Nitya. Aditya will talk about the admission process. I know you are in between the parties, so
Yeah.
I don't want to disturb you much. But yeah, thanks Nitya for taking time.
Yeah, of course. I'm sorry I rushed through that. I am at a party right now. But if anyone has any questions or anything further that you want me to clarify, you can always reach out to me personally. I kind of went super fast through that, but I hope I explained some of the merit scholarships and stuff like that for you all to understand as well.
Yep, you did. Thanks, Nitya.
Thanks for having me, Kishore Uncle.
Yeah, Aditya.
All right, I think it's my turn now. What's up, guys? Jed, if you want to turn your camera on. Oh, never mind. It doesn't have one. What's up, guys? How's it going? I'm Aditya. Feel free to call me Adi. I met Kishore Uncle like about 2 years ago when I did a similar presentation, just like this one. And I'm back. So without further ado, let's get to it. Hope all of you guys can see my screen.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
All right, so college admissions for this year. First of all, I want to start with, 2 years ago when I did my last presentation, college admissions looked very different than it does now. It's become a lot more competitive. Now, I'm 20 years old, so I applied to colleges in the 2020 season, which was 2.5 years ago. And it was, I believe, 2 entire cycles ago. And back then, to give you a reference, there were 59,000 applications applying to UT. This year, there are more than 10% more, or around 12% more. So 66,000 in 2022. And this year for 2023, the numbers are probably going to be even higher. And this is the case at most colleges. So not just at UT, but at Harvard, at Stanford, at basically any major university across the country. We've been seeing 10, 20% increases in application numbers over the past few years. The reason for this is a number of reasons. For one, application fees are becoming easier and easier to avoid, thanks to low-income grants, things like that. The second key thing is most schools are now test optional for tests like the SAT. So it's caused a lot of people who normally wouldn't want to apply to these schools to want to apply. And I should note that just because applicant numbers are going up does not mean acceptance rates are going up. In fact, they are going down because the number of seats at every single school stays the same. And therefore, the acceptance rates for most schools have declined. Harvard, for example, when I applied in 2020, had about 5% acceptance rate. In 2022, they declined to about a 3% acceptance rate. So that's a 40% decline in the total number of people that they take. Let's talk about me a little bit. I'm 20. I go to UT Austin, and I'm originally from Katy, so here in Houston. I went to Tompkins High School. Some of the things that I've done after entering college, I founded an app that raised over $200,000 from investors. I won a Princeton University entrepreneurship competition. It's the largest one in the world. I was top 12 in that out of over 500 applications. I've also interned at companies like Red Bull, Coldwell Banker, Anthos Capital, and Capital Factory over in Austin. My high school stats were not great. I was 4.1 out of 5 in terms of GPA. My rank was only about the top 25th percentile, the top 25%, which is about the 75th percentile. That's not great for a school like Tompkins, and it's well below the margins that get you into a school like UT. We'll talk a little bit more later about how I circumvented that and managed to get into UT, as well as a number of other schools. My SAT score, I had a 1510, which is a 760 on the math section and a 750 on the reading and writing section. My team over here, we're all college consultants who are in college at the moment. We got into a number of schools. I got into UT, Rice, and UMichigan. Jayesh is here with me. He got into a number of schools, including NYU and Heriot-Watt, which is the #1 university in the Middle East. Jayesh, do you want to intro yourself?
Yeah. Out of high school, I went to Dubai and worked there for 2 years at a company while studying in the Edinburgh School of Business, which is one of Heriot-Watt's branches. And that company gave me a complete free studying for the next 2 years for me in the U of H. And I'll start working with them after that. And likely I can do my MBA as well for free while working and doing the MBA here. So I'm going to be one of the people helping Aditya and you guys get into college.
Yeah. Thanks for that intro, Jayesh. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we
Okay,
can.
yeah, just making sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, without further ado, so let's talk more. One more person on our team, his name's Srinidhi. He got into schools like Rice, UMichigan, Baylor University, UCSD. He's currently at U of H with a full ride, meaning he pays no tuition, which is an excellent deal. And it's one of the primary best deals that you can get in college. So the college application process, like I said, has become more competitive over time. There's a lot of uncertainties, especially if you're a parent, and especially because we're all Indian. Some of you guys might have heard about things like affirmative action. A lot of schools tend to give Indians like us a disadvantage because we're Indian. The reason is, most applications for Indian students look the same, right? We're all going into engineering, we're all going into business school, or we're all going into the medical or law fields. And so for most Indians across the US, our applications look almost the same, right? We have high grades consistently because we study. We have high test scores, and our extracurriculars are usually nearly the same, which is why it's very hard to stand out. And I'll be giving you guys some tips later on how to do that. Make sure to stay till the very end, because I'm also going to be giving you guys 3 free tips that you can do to improve your chances of getting into top colleges. And they are like tips that me and my friends kind of used when we were applying to colleges. So you may not hear these from normal college counselors or from places like Testmasters. So be sure to stick around till then. But let's quickly go over the components of a college application. You have grades and standardized test scores like your GPA, your AP exam scores, and tests like the SAT and ACT. These are like the majority of what college counselors are going to look at when they're looking at your application. And if you're already in 11th or 12th grade, you can't change these very much. But if you're just starting out, like you're in 8th or 9th grade, there's a lot of potential. And the best way to do this is to figure out the types of classes that you're going to be taking. The second component is essays and supplemental questions. And this is generally one of the things that throws Indian parents off a lot. Anyone who's been to India, if you've heard of entrance exams like the IIT, joint entrance exam, you'll know that admission to most colleges in India is based on entrance exams like that and purely based on those. It's the same in most other countries throughout the world. In China, you take one test called the Gaokao, and that test and your score on it determines which college you will be going to. So many parents, when they look at the SAT or the ACT in the US, they tend to think that it's an entrance exam and that your score has a direct influence on which university you'll be going to. However, that is not the case. The US, most schools use holistic admissions, meaning they look at everything on this page combined. They look at your grades, your test scores. And the one thing that throws people off is obviously essays and supplemental questions. If you're in high school and you've been researching this, you know what I'm talking about. But to those of you who aren't aware, when you're applying to college, you have to write a long essay. If you're applying to UT, it's called the Apply Texas essay. And if you're applying to any other school through the Common App, it's called the Common App essay. And these essays are about 500 to 600 words long, about 650 is the word cap. And they are the primary essay that colleges look at. In addition, most schools like UT have supplemental questions that they ask. So they'll ask you like, what are your interests? What do you look to achieve by coming to this school? And aside from your grades, this is the number one thing that counselors will look at. If you have bad grades or your stats or test scores aren't that good, the essays are where you make up for it. The third thing they look at is your resume and your extracurriculars. And generally you want 6 to 8 extracurriculars that will be looked at with holistic review in combination with all the other components on your application. And generally these can be things like projects, research, school clubs, volunteering, sports, hobbies, basically anything you did in your free time in high school aside from studying or just hanging out, playing around. There are good extracurriculars and there are bad extracurriculars. I'll talk a little bit more later in detail about how you should position your extracurriculars and what kinds of extracurriculars you should pursue. The last thing on this list is recommendation letters and interviews. So most colleges require 2 recommendation letters from 2 of your teachers. I recommend asking your senior or junior year teachers for them because they know you best. And if you ask someone from freshman year or sophomore year, unless you've maintained your relationship with them, they're probably not going to remember you very well. And therefore their letter won't be as powerful as it could be from someone who knows you better. UT does not require this, so I wouldn't submit it to them. But if you're applying to any Ivy League schools like Harvard, or if you're applying to a school like Stanford, they require this. So be sure to get that done. I highly recommend asking in the first week of school, if not earlier. The second thing there is interviews. UT doesn't do these. Pretty much no state school does these. But if you're applying to a private school, most of them do have interviews. Now, keep in mind, getting an interview is not necessarily a good thing. Oftentimes, a lot of schools have limited availability for how many interviews they can schedule. So they put very little emphasis on this. However, if you do get offered the chance to interview for a school like Harvard, I highly recommend you take it because it offers them another chance to get to know you better. And it does boost your application if you're offered the chance and you take it. We also offer interview training in our packages, which I'll talk about later. But how are these applications reviewed? Let's talk about the admissions officers. Every single school, from even the smallest to small state schools, all the way up to the big private universities, have a team of admissions counselors who read applications year round. These can be as small as 5 people, going all the way up to hundreds of people at some of the biggest schools. The way these officers do it is they spend about 2 to 10 minutes per application. And this is in theory. This is based on information that college consultants have gathered over the years. Like I said, most schools have holistic review, meaning they're looking at your grades, they're looking at your SAT score, your extracurriculars, they're reading your essays, and they're looking at your recommendation letters and your interviews. However, in theory, while they say that they're looking at all of those things, that's not necessarily always true. We can't confirm that it's 100% true, which is why I talk about having good hooks in your application, writing a proper essay, making sure you grab attention with your story and with your grades, and that anytime you have something that could potentially disqualify you, like having a bad test score, for example, you find other ways in your application to make up for it. That's the benefit of having holistic review. Like I said, if you can get the attention of these counselors, they will often personally advocate for you. And at the end of each break, every day of reading, these counselors often discuss amongst themselves which students need to be admitted, which needs to be waitlisted, and who should be disqualified from being entered. Let's go in a little more detail about academics. So I'll start out with GPA. If you're a high schooler in the audience or you're a student, you know what I'm talking about. It's for the most part, GPAs are ranked on a 4 or 5 point scale in your high school. Although I have seen some high schools do it on a 6 point scale. And Your GPA is a number. It's basically one number thrown out that shows your entire high school course load of work and how you've performed in them. It basically eliminates the need to have to look at an entire report card. However, most admissions counselors will still do that because there might be certain areas of academics that you're stronger. For example, if you're a good science student, but not so much of a good art student, like they will note that down. So you don't have to worry about that. Your GPA usually assigns a class rank for you. And this is important, so pay attention. The high school you go to will have a huge effect on your class rank. I went to Tompkins High School, which is in Katy, and it's a class of 900 people, over 900. It's also a very competitive school, which is why most ranks at that school were very competitive. Now, if you're going to a less competitive school, if you're going to one with less people, or if the demographic overall is less competitive, then chances are you're going to have a better rank. Now, at schools like UT, where the top 6% of ranks in high school are accepted into UT regardless of the high school, it's a huge advantage to go to a school that's less competitive because it's a lot easier to get into that top 6%. And that's exactly what happened with my high school, because there were so many students at my high school who fell outside the top 6%, who would normally have gotten into UT had they gone to a less competitive school. However, at schools like Harvard, which are purely holistic and don't have any kind of quota, they will take into account what kind of high school you went to. So even if you have an amazing class rank and you're doing really good, they will look at the number of people in your high school and how competitive it is. And if it's not that competitive, they're not going to give it as much weight as they normally would. It's a lot more impressive to be slightly lower ranked at a more competitive school than it is to be at the top rank at a less competitive school. So make sure to keep that into account, and don't get too worried about your rank, because a lot of it determines on where people are around you, and that's usually out of your control. Take more AP classes to maximize your 5.0s, because AP classes obviously offer you a 5 if you get an A in the class. Although be careful to not overdo it like I did when I was in high school. That is a huge mistake that most high schoolers make. And anyone who's done college admissions will likely tell you not to repeat it. Standardized tests is the next thing we'll be talking about. So the SAT and the ACT are the two main standardized tests. The SAT is the more dominant one. I haven't really heard of people taking the ACT anymore. It's kind of dying out. Like I said earlier, this is not an admissions test. So your score on this does not determine alone whether or not you'll get into a school. I recommend taking the SAT. It's ranked out of 1,600 points with 800 each. There's a math section and a reading section. The reading section is notoriously hard to gain. It's very hard to study for. And even if you pay like thousands of dollars to a course like Testmasters, like it's very hard to actually master the reading section because the questions on it are so random. When I studied for the SAT, I put nearly all my focus on studying for the math section, which is fairly objective, and the distributions of questions and the types of questions remain fairly consistent across all tests. So me and Jayesh and Trinity will be throwing an SAT webinar sometime in the coming weeks that you guys will be invited to if you sign up for one of our courses. And in that, we'll be talking a lot more about the insider tips that we trained ourselves on and learned to boost our scores. All of us got scores above 1,500, which put us in the top 1%. And that's one of the key reasons we were able to get into such good schools, despite having like not so great grades. While the SAT is test optional for most universities now, I do recommend taking it anyway and submitting your score because it will give you an advantage if it's a good score. The next part we'll cover in detail is essays and supplements. As stated earlier, there's the Common App essay and the Applied Texas essay. That one essay is about 650 words. People generally spend like dozens of hours building that one essay because it is so important. And the importance of it is not to be like disputed at all. It's very important. And that one essay, in addition to all the supplemental questions, give you the best opportunity to portray yourself as more than just a number, right? Generally, when admissions counselors are looking, the reason so many Indian candidates get rejected at many of these schools is because the only thing they have going for them are numbers. They have high SAT scores, we have high grades, good GPAs, good exam scores, but it's very hard to differentiate between one candidate to the next if you don't have a personal story or some kind of unique factor to differentiate you. You know, if you think back to the first slide, I showed you that there's 66,000 people who applied to UT last semester. If you have a good essay and you have good supplemental questions that portray who you are and what you want to do, you can easily get in the top 10% of them. And you can very easily get your way into UT if you do that. So this is important. Be sure to spend some time on it. And the best practices for how to do that, have 4 ideas here. The first is to talk about the school itself. If you're writing supplemental questions from, let's say, Harvard, for example, you want to describe specifically how is Harvard going to help me achieve my goals. If I'm looking to get into investment banking, for example, I might want to talk about a specific club or a specific program at Harvard that I want to be a part of. And that club or that program is a pathway to proper successful investment banking careers. That's one example. Second example, you want to have a strong hook. Me, Jayesh, and Srinidhi will be talking in our consulting courses on how to do that. We'll be working one-on-one with each student to make sure we get their story down and help them write a strong hook. But you can also do this on your own. You can figure out a strong hook, think back to some times in your high school life when you had some inspiring moments, or when you had a moment that really changed the way you think about your life or the career you want to do. Those are generally the best hooks, right? Stories that tell who you are, stories that tell about how you came back from something, things like that. College admissions counselors love that. They love seeing it. And whenever they see something like that, they usually tend to pay attention, and it really sets you apart. The third thing I want to talk about is uniqueness. One thing I see a lot of in college essays is common things. You know, volunteering is a big one. People generally do hundreds of hours of volunteering in high school, and they don't understand that it doesn't really help them if they can't portray it the right way. You know, having the theme of like, oh, I want to help people, that's why I went to volunteering. It's not very strong because it's so common. You want to have something more focused on what you want to do. And you want to find ways to tie in what you did in high school and how it ties in with what you're doing in your future. Very similar to point number 4, which is underlying goals and themes. Identify your spike. We'll talk about that in a few slides. Spike in your application, which is basically what you want to do in your life and what you've done in your life so far to get to that goal. Those are generally the best practices for college essays and for supplementals. Now we talk about spike. So one myth parents often have is the myth of being well-rounded. Whenever kids are doing things outside of high school, they're generally all over the place, right? You might play a sport like tennis, or you might do karate or taekwondo. You might decide to do hundreds of hours of volunteering, whether it's to a program like Force or something like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, or you might try to get into research and start a bunch of clubs, do all kinds of things at the same time. This actually hurts you more than it helps. The one thing college admissions counselors like to see is focus, and they want to see that you've identified one specific goal and that everything you've done in high school has helped propel you towards that goal. This is called having a spike in your application. Everything on your resume, in your essay, in your classwork even should point towards a common theme that you want to achieve later in your life. For example, if I wanted to work in investment banking, I would talk about how I was an FBLA officer for 4 years. That's Future Business Leaders of America. It's a very common club in high school. I did a finance internship the year before senior year, summer before senior year. I led and managed an investment club in my high school. I conducted research on financial algorithms with the local professor. And I'm applying to this college as a finance major, and I have good scores in math on my math tests, in my math classes, to show that I can handle the coursework of being in finance. This goes the same with, anything else you want to do. If you want to be a doctor, like have things that show that you did medical research or show that you participated in medical clubs in high school. And not just your extracurriculars, but also your essays and your coursework should reflect this as well. You want to have everything kind of pointing towards one thing that you really, really want to be. If I'm a college admissions counselor and I'm reading your application and you're looking to be this guy, like I would think, wow, this guy is very committed to being in finance, right? He's so passionate about it that he's been doing this his entire high school life. And I'm sure that if he came to our college and used our program for finance, he would be very successful and very driven in his career. So that's exactly what counselors are looking for. Talk a little bit about my application and how I used the Spike in my application. Some things to note: the schools I got into were Rice, UT, where I go now, and the University of Michigan, which are all fantastic business schools, and I applied as a business major. I was well below the top 6% of my class. I had relatively poor grades because I was a C student my entire life, but I made up for that with a high SAT score. And generally what happens is when you have relatively lower grades but a high test score, what you're showing to admissions counselors is that you have the will to score well in classes, you have the academic talent, you're just not using it. And when they see that, the next thing they're going to look at is your essays and your extracurriculars. And in my case, it was very clear why I wasn't getting great grades in high school. It's because I was focusing all my time and attention on the company I started in high school. I started an e-commerce platform called Mary Ferry, which I raised over 200K from investors from back in 2019. And I managed to get to over 125,000 users. It was also endorsed by the Indian government and featured by over 30 different news organizations. I also wrote a lot on Quora, which used to be like this big blogging platform. It's not as big anymore, but I was a top writer on Quora in 2019. Got over 4 million views on that platform talking about startups and my life as a startup founder. So that's kind of the main spike in my application, right? And admissions counselors saw that, so they very easily understood why I wasn't getting such great grades. Obviously, I talked a lot about my passion for startups, and I wrote my essays around that topic as well. I talked about what I want to do in college, how I want to use entrepreneurship resources for my startups, and that's what got me into these schools. UT Austin has a very strong entrepreneurship scene, and they've been called the Berkeley of the South or the Stanford of the South for how many startups and big companies have come out of there in the last few years. So the application officers at that school took my application very well because of my passion for entrepreneurship, and they gave me a spot. The same went with Rice and University of Michigan as well. So this is a good example of how I used a Spike in my application to overcome the weaknesses like my academic grades. That drives me into some things I didn't do. There's a really big cost of getting into college. Things like test masters and SAT prep, college consulting, these cost a lot of money, but you can almost think of them as an investment, right? If you get into a better college, you will make a bigger income, and college is one of the most important decisions that you can make in your life, right? But one thing I don't recommend is joining any kind of SAT test prep. People overthink the SAT a lot. It's very easily gameable. It's a hard test, and it's hard by design. There's statistical distributions and formulas behind the scenes that make it very hard to move your score, almost like an IQ test. But if you focus on certain aspects of the test, rather than trying to game the entire thing and just cram for it, which you can't do, then you're likely to gain a much bigger improvement in your score. And places like test masters, almost everyone does them in high school, at least amongst Indians. I haven't seen any evidence that it really helps. The reason for this is they often make you take easier tests at the start, which boosts your score. And then they make you take harder tests at they make you test harder tests at the start, which lower your score, and they make you take easier tests at the end, which show an increase in your score. So they kind of are lying to you with those numbers. Now, they're not lying completely. It's a little misleading, but you should keep that into account when looking at a program like Test Masters. When it comes to college consulting, the valedictorian of my high school went to Stanford, but he told us only after he got into Stanford that he paid $40,000 to a college consultant to help him. And many of these consultants behind the scenes, they do all kinds of unethical things. Maybe they write your essays for you. Maybe they talk directly to admissions counselors to get you a seat. Whether or not you're interested in doing something like that is up to you. And the cost of expensive programs like that is also up to you. If that's something you're willing to do to help you or your child get into a better school, that's completely your decision. But at the end of the day, think of it as an investment. If you're willing to put a high cost into college consulting, you might be able to get into a better school. Because if your application can't be helped very much, or if the consultant you get isn't great, you just spent a lot of money for getting no real results, and it's going to hurt you in the long term. which is why me and my team kind of do this differently. We're not offering expensive courses or large amounts of one-on-one advice. I believe in optimization, meaning we can actually sit down with you or your child and work with them for just 2 to 3 hours for a very low price relatively, and get them on the right track to getting into a top school, maybe boosting their chances of getting in by a good percentage. We offer a high level training for the SAT. Like I said, you don't need to spend hours and hours studying for this test. We can game it, and in just 1 hour, we can give you enough tips to where you'll be able to significantly boost your score. We'll also sit down with you for an hour or two and talk about your life, your experiences, your career goals, and we'll help you brainstorm on the spot how to write your essays and how to correct them. Obviously, we'll offer you advice on how to make them better and to improve them as well. And we're going to offer you personalized advice for your life story, for what you're interested in. You know, I believe in giving a man, don't give a man a fish, but teach them how to fish. And that's exactly what we're doing here. We're going to teach you how to write the right essays and to think about college applications in the right way, so that you don't have to spend tons of money trying to get someone to do it for you or guide you through the entire process. You'll be smart enough and mature enough to do it on your own. These are our packages. There's a $250 package that includes some SAT training and a mock interview, as well as a personalized list of colleges that we give you. There's also a $750 package that includes a lot more. You guys can take a second to read it. The $750 package in the middle is good if you're in 12th grade and you're about to apply to college this year. But if you're younger than that and you're still in high school, you still have time, there's another package on the right, in which we'll sit down with you and we'll actually talk to you about your goals and everything. We'll give you SAT training like everyone else, but we'll also help you pick out your courses, and we'll tell you and recommend extracurriculars for you to do for your remaining years of high school to boost your chances of getting in. And I'm going to drop a form in the chat that you guys can fill out. You guys can fill this out while we're talking a little bit more. I have some tips to share with you while we're doing that. So if you're interested, feel free to fill out the form. It'll be sent in email later as well. If you're interested, we'll give you a call sometime this week and we can talk more. We'll give you a free consultation over the phone about your situation, about your grades and everything, the colleges you're trying to apply to. There's no obligation to sign up, and we'll probably give you some free advice while we're at it. So do give us a call, or do give us your number. We'll give you a call. Now it's time for the tips, like I promised. These are tips that you probably will not hear anywhere else, but we're giving them to you because we all recently went through college applications, and these were the tips that we got. The first tip, today is August 1st, and I recommend that you or your children apply to Texas A&M as soon as possible. Like, get your application in by this weekend. The reason for this is, unlike UT, unlike most schools in the United States, Texas A&M has rolling admissions, which means their admissions process fills up as they go. They don't release admissions decisions all at once. Instead, you apply in whenever, and they just get back to you whenever. And that means they fill up seats very, very fast. Now, A&M is not a selective school. They are a safety school for most people. And so it's great to have it as kind of a backup if you don't get into any of the schools you actually want to go to. But in my case, I applied to A&M in 2020 in late September, which I actually got denied from A&M, not because I wasn't good enough for them, but because they were full. And many people around me got the same way. So on their website, it will say that their applications process is running from August 1st all the way to, they take applications to like February, I think, but I highly recommend applying in August itself. They don't have any supplemental questions. They don't even require an essay, if I remember correctly. And if you're in the top 10% of your class, they guarantee you a spot. But if you're outside that range, I recommend applying immediately. The second thing I recommend is when you're applying to UT Austin, use the common application, not Apply Texas. The reason for this is Apply Texas is not a great software. When admissions officers are reading your application, they see it in a certain format. Now, when you're using Apply Texas, like many people I know did, they see it just completely in all caps, like in words. It literally, if you open the Notepad app on your computer, that's literally what it looks like. It does not look good at all. If you go to Common App and you fill out your application there in the exact same way, you can actually hit download, and the Common App will show you your application exactly as it's presented to admissions officers. And it looks a lot nicer. It looks much better than the Apply Texas application. This is something I tell everyone applying to UT, use Common App. It makes a huge difference in the way your application is perceived. And that tip alone, like, doesn't take any time, and it can actually boost your chances of getting into UT by a few percent. I used the Common App when I got into UT. Most people I know who didn't get in, who I think should have gotten, they used Apply Texas. And I feel like maybe that's one of the reasons why. Reason number three is tip number three is also very similar. UT doesn't take the Coalition application, but many schools like Harvard, Stanford, and USC take the Coalition application. Coalition looks better than Common App. It's the best looking application in my opinion. I used Coalition for most schools that I applied to, and it helped me get into schools like Rice. So similarly there, I recommend using Coalition. This might be a little inconvenient because some schools don't take it. So you'll probably have to have an account on both Common App and Coalition. But if you have the time and your teachers are willing to upload recommendation letters into both portals, I highly recommend using Coalition when you can. And those are my 3 tips for you guys. Pitch.com. Yeah. You guys, fill out the form if you're interested. We'll reach out to you this week. I'll get on the phone with you and give you some free advice. And if you're interested in signing up for a package, you can do that as well. And I'll let Kishore take over now.
Yeah, thanks, Aditya. There are a few questions in the chat window. Let me.
Yeah, I see that. We'll be answering question and answer now. Thank you guys.
Right. Yeah, if you have any questions related to, so, right, again, as mentioned, there are 2 aspects, one from kids perspective, one from parents perspective. So if you have questions on right from parents or from kids, you can put them in the chat window and we will answer them. So yes, we'll share the recording to all the members who registered. How did you land up the research position with the professors? Any tips for that, Aditya?
Can you guys hear me?
How did you land up the research position with the professor?
With the professor. Which question are we talking about?
Yeah, there's a question from Ravi on how to write if you want to get a research position with a professor. Do you have any tips? I think in one of the slides.
Yes.
You might
So
have,
yeah, in my case, so I didn't take a research position, but I was offered one. There was a professor at the University of Houston who offered me the chance to research on blockchain. This is mostly a matter of cold outreach. If you want to actually be able to get professors to talk to you, they have to know that you exist. Some of them are very skeptical. They don't want high schoolers working on their research with them. But in a lot of cases, like if you're a high schooler and you just cold email them or reach out on LinkedIn, they'll be responsive and they might just offer you a position. So I recommend just talking to as many professors. Next person, does it matter which teacher you get a recommendation letter from? It doesn't matter, but I would recommend a teacher who you had a good grade in class with. So if you got a 97 in a class and it's an AP class, teacher likes you, that would be a pretty good person. But if you had a poor grade in a class and the teacher doesn't like you, they think you're lazy, whatever, you probably don't want to ask that person. Is there a disadvantage to taking the ACT instead of the SAT? There's no disadvantage. Most schools will consider them the same. I personally would recommend the SAT, and our training will be on the SAT. I don't know very many people who take the ACT, and I believe it's a dying test. But if you're better with science, then the ACT has a science section, and that's usually the reason people recommend for taking the ACT. It really comes down to personal choice for you. Did I get the course I preferred at UT? I applied to UT as a business major, and I got into McCombs. But I will note that a lot of people, even if you're in the top 6%, that's required to get into UT, auto admit. A lot of people, like if they don't put effort into their essays or they don't have a great application, they might not get that course. So UT will auto admit you. They guarantee you a spot if you're in the top 6%, but they don't guarantee your major. So always make sure to write about your major and make sure you tie it into your spike in the application. Will I be able to help for California universities? Yes, we will. I applied to schools like Berkeley and UCSD. Srinidhi actually got into UCSD and UCLA, I believe. So we understand the applications process. We can help you there. How to get internship opportunities. It's a lot of networking. Like I said, cold outreach. My high school internship was at Coldwell Banker, which is a realty firm. I was really interested in real estate investing at the time. So I reached out to local realtors in the area and one of them simply offered me the chance to work with them. It was a pretty fun internship. I learned a lot. And through that realtor, I was actually able to get recommendations to a number of people. Is it important to follow a career path alongside your extracurriculars and chosen classes? This isn't a requirement. If you want to make a career change at the end of high school, if you pursued like medical stuff your entire high school life, and when you're going to college, you're thinking, no, I actually want to go into business, then you can write about that in your application and you can portray like, you know, how the medical field and all the stuff I did in medical, how can I tie it into business, right? Maybe you want to go into a specific field of business. Maybe you want to go into pharmaceuticals, you want to go into biotech. I had a friend who did exactly that, and he got into UCSD, which is a great business school and a great medical school, and he got in for a joint medical and business program because he researched business during COVID, during his senior year, and he was able to tie both of them in properly. How does the PSAT help in college admissions? I think Nitya talked about this earlier. The PSAT is what's used for national merit for scholarships. If you've already taken the PSAT and you're a senior, you don't need to worry about it anymore. The SAT is what you should focus on. But if you're a sophomore or a junior, you'll probably take it this year. If you get a good grade on it, I believe in the top 1%, you'll get something called National Merit, which is a decent award. There's some scholarship money there and it looks good on college apps, but that's about it. They don't really take your score into account that much. Do you offer anything for college essay brainstorming only? So we'll sit down with you. We'll talk to you in pretty heavy detail about your life, about your career goals, things like that. And we'll help you write the application. We have a process for doing that I can talk to you more about if you fill out the form. I hear that kids don't know which field they want to take until junior year. When did you identify your interests? Me personally, I've been interested in startups since I was a kid. Even before like my app in high school, I made a bunch of apps and released them. They didn't go anywhere, but I kept doing it. A lot of people don't know what they want to do, and that's okay. The point is to be transparent, and a lot of schools do allow you to apply undecided as well. And if you're applying undecided, you don't know what you want to major in. The point is to show more that you're a formidable and capable student and that you can do a variety of things. At the same time, however, you want to have a number of things down and you want to show that you've stayed consistent, focused on a number of things without needing to not have a spike. Provide some tips for 9th graders. So feel free to fill out the form and I'll talk to you personally, give you some free advice on how to do that. But some tips I could give you guys right now is pick like one stream of AP courses. If you look at the different types of AP courses that there are, there's art courses, there's science courses, math courses, CS courses, and many of them are layered. So you do one AP course to get to the next one. For example, you take AP Comp Sci Principles to take AP Comp Sci A. And then a lot of schools have more advanced classes than that. So if you're following the computer science track, you might want to take that basic AP course in your freshman year or your sophomore year, and then continue on to have more AP courses. And during that time, you want to work on projects, you want to get on software engineering internships, so that by the time you get to 12th grade, you have a very solid like application that you can show to counselors, and it's all like CS. It shows your strong CS background. I think that's all. Is there any other questions?
What do you think about going to college with an undecided? Okay, you already answered that.
How many colleges do you typically recommend a student to apply? That's a good question. Me personally, I applied to about 10 schools and I got into 5 of them, which I showed you guys earlier. I've had friends who applied to as many as 30 schools, and I've had friends who just applied to 1 or 2. What I would recommend is having at least 2 safety schools. Those are schools that you can get a very good chance of admission into, and those are kind of your backups. Then I would have around 5 to 6 target schools. You got to keep in mind that application fees are expensive. It costs between 75 to $100 per school that you apply to. So you have to weigh the cost of focusing on fewer schools and spending less money, but more time on those applications versus having more schools, but spending less time on those applications. Does college credit help in admissions? So a lot of counselors will see that if you've done a few credits of college credit, like in AP courses or dual credit from a community college, those are generally harder classes, and it shows that you're capable of taking a college workload. So yeah, it does help. Is it recommended to change your major in college? Most people do, actually. I think at least half of people change their major in college. So it's very, very common.
Which one is better, AP or CCPA?
I don't know what CCP is, I'm sorry. But if I had to recommend AP courses versus dual credit, this is a bit of a debate. It depends on the school district that you're in and the rules they have around GPA. In Katy ISD, where I studied, AP courses gave you 5.0s if you got an A, and dual credit courses gave you a 4.5. So AP courses were better speaking, but they are also harder than dual credit. So if you don't think you can get an A in an AP course, if you don't have that level of flexibility, or you have too much workload, but you could probably do better in a dual credit course, you might want to go for that dual credit course. How many APs would I recommend per year? It depends. I did 6 AP classes my senior year, and I did only 1 my freshman year. I did 2 my sophomore year, and I did 4 my junior year. The further you go along in high school, the more AP classes you can take, because a lot of them require you to be in 10th grade or 11th grade. But it's also a matter of balancing your workload and all the extracurriculars you have. AP or IB courses. So I'm not very familiar with IB. I do know a lot of schools around Houston offer it. And generally IB looks pretty good. IB is generally associated with private schools. So if you're a student at a private high school somewhere in Houston, you're probably doing IB, if I'm not mistaken. But that's kind of a survivorship bias thing. IB is offered at more private schools, and those schools have more resources to get into top colleges, which is why you see people with IB getting into top schools. It doesn't necessarily mean that IB is better than AP. Which extracurriculars do I have? For that, I would have to know the specifics, what you're interested in, where you go to high school, things like that. If you want to fill out the form, I'd be happy to chat personally. Do we have any more questions? Last call.
What extracurriculars do you recommend?
What AP should I take if I'm interested in neuroscience? Personally, I loved AP Bio. I love biology, even though I'm a business major. I had a huge passion for biology, so I took AP Bio, loved that class. Physics is something that most college courses require. I will say this, when you get into college, most colleges have a core curriculum, which consists of a number of science courses, and most AP science courses do fulfill those. So if you're going into neuroscience, there's a good chance that you'll have to take advanced biology courses when you get into college. And biology 101, biology 301, like those will be prerequisites for those courses in college. But classes like AP Bio, if you do good on the AP exam, they fulfill that requirement. So I highly recommend taking as many AP science courses as you can, so that you can focus on the more important classes when you get to college for neuroscience.
I think you covered most of the questions, Aditya. Yeah, if there
Yeah.
are any other questions, feel free to fill the form, and yeah, Aditya and team will contact you.
Yeah, we'll send a form out in email as well. So if you missed it, you'll get another chance.
So also, right, whatever Aditya shared will cover from the kids' perspective, how they need to prepare, all those things. So again, as parents, it is also important because scholarships, grants may not cover all the 100%. So it is better to start saving using one of the strategies. So yeah, you can schedule a call. I already shared my email ID. So if you want to have a one-on-one call, you can send an email and we can schedule a one-on-one call on the financial aspects or like what are the various strategies which are good for your scenario. So yeah, you can send me an email and I have over 100+ team members, licensed professionals. So either me or one of them will contact you and set up a one-on-one call, and they will go through your current scenario and suggest you what are the best ways to start saving for the kids' college. With that, hope you all got some information which you're looking for from both the perspectives, from kids' perspective and from parents' perspective. And yeah, if you need anything, yeah, please let us know. And I'll share the recording. I'll also share the Google document with all the scholarship information, everything, whoever registered for this meeting. Yeah, with that, thanks everyone. Hope it was useful. Yeah, share your feedback in email or yeah, you can send your feedback in the email so we can add something if we missed anything or if you want us to cover any other topics in future sessions, we can do that. Thanks everyone and have a nice evening. Good night, everyone.